Judging from the trend over the last 30 years or so, it may soon be true that there will be more members of the church in Africa than there are here in the United States. Churches in Africa are still growing, whereas churches in the States seem to be in serious decline. It may not be all that long until the churches in Africa will need to be sending missionaries to the United States. But what will be the nature of the African church? Will it hold firmly to the Word? Will the preaching be Bible-grounded and Christ-centered? Or will the church be an odd mixture of misunderstood, imported customs? There are many different schools operated by our brothers in Africa. Some are large, others are small. But one thing that they all have in common, they use textbooks that are imported, that were designed for use somewhere else. This topic came up for discussion a lot while I was working at Nigerian Christian Bible College in the mid-90s. At that time, the school was developing one of the finest biblical libraries on the continent. But the students didn't have textbooks, and they didn't have books that they could take home with them when they finished their studies. The inadequacies of the imported textbooks that we were using were very apparent. Even very good students would often misunderstood what they read in the textbooks. Sometimes the misunderstanding was because of a complicated grammatical construction that a person reading English as a second language couldn't follow. Sometimes it was because the books used illustrations that didn't illustrate. Illustrations based on things in America that these people didn't understand and had never experienced. Several attempts have been made by missionaries to address the need for African textbooks. Several brothers have assumed that if they put their mind to it, they could produce textbooks that would be more relevant for use in Africa. Many of these have been an improvement over what was there previously, but the books have not been as much of an improvement as one might have hoped. In 1997, I began studies at Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That school was chosen because the faculty there was very well equipped to guide a research project into the question of what kind of textbooks were needed to maximize learning at African Bible colleges. I studied at Concordia for 3 years, reading everything we could find on the subject, and we designed by 1999 a series of experimental books that were then used to test students at Nigerian Christian Bible College, at George Benson Christian College in Zambia, at the Ghana Bible College, and even at the Ghana Baptist Seminary. The results of that extensive research were published in the Evangelical Missiological Society's dissertation series, and also in 2 articles that appeared in the Evangelical Mission Quarterly. Between 2000 and 2005, we produced 2 textbooks based on the principles learned from that research. But then a series of family events and loss of support caused the textbook project to cease. Today, at most of our schools in Africa, the situation is a little different from what it was 25 years ago. They're still using imported books that don't really meet their needs. In April of this year, I went to Nigeria to hold a couple of seminars at 2 of the schools there. The seminars were both well attended and very successful, but an additional benefit, an unexpected blessing of the trip, was that I got to be in contact with some of the students and teachers who have been using some of the books that were prepared based on that research. They clearly felt that these books had great advantages over what they have been using. They really appreciate the difference. We were on the right track, but how are we going to refine those books and produce more? It has been suggested that we remain with the Flanders Road congregation in Toledo, Ohio, where I serve both as the evangelist and as one of the elders. The suggestion was that I move to a part-time role with this congregation, with half of my time being devoted to writing. This would have an advantage or two. It would keep us closer to our family. It would keep us in a part of the world that's more comfortable. and a part of the world where study materials are more available. But it has a disadvantage of being in a Western context where it would be very difficult to continue thinking about the needs of Africans and keep that in the forefront of my mind. Funds would also be a problem. In order for the Flanders Road Church to be able to do that, we would need to raise money to hire a second person to take up the slack here. Given the cost of living in Toledo, that would involve finding an additional $5,000 per month of support. A less expensive proposal is that we return to Africa where the cost of living is lower. Living on the campus of one of the existing schools, we could live on much less. In most parts of Africa, $3,500 a month would be quite adequate. Also, it would have the advantage of having African students available so that we could continually test the books and make sure that we were writing what was really needed. And we would also be able to work with the new generation of African teachers to help them learn better teaching methods. Several locations are currently under consideration for carrying on this work. The pros and cons of each of the locations will have to be weighed carefully before a move is made, but we hope to be able to make a move in August or September of next year. Of course, to do that, we have to have commitments. We have to have the funds. We have to be able to say that we have that $3,500 a month of support, or the government will not even let us into their country. Now, many of you might wish to give, but you might not be able to make a long-term monthly commitment. One-time contributions from individuals or churches are acceptable as well. Others might want to make a pledge out of a portion of their estate. One way or another, though, we need to raise a fund that will support this work. $3,500 a month is not a huge figure, but this work will make a huge difference.